The morning in Cedar Creek did not begin with peace. It began with a warning carried on the icy wind. A battered German shepherd stumbled from the dark line of winter woods, his paws leaving smeared tracks of blood in the snow. His golden eyes, locked firmly on two frightened little girls in torn coats, as though he had been searching for them all along. Behind him, hidden by the mist and trees, lay a police cruiser crushed beneath a fallen pine, its windshield shattered like ice, and inside it an unconscious officer slumped motionless against an airbag. No one in that quiet town expected the broken dog to become a savior. But sometimes, when all hope has slipped away, God sends his angels on four legs. The mountain town of Cedar Creek was waking slowly under a pale dawn that froze the breath in people's throats before it even left their lips. Snow from the night before coated the cracked pavement in thin sheets, crunching under boots like brittle glass. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys, carrying the smell of pine wood into the streets, comforting to some, but painful for those who had no warm homes left to return to. For Maya Parker, that smell was like an old wound. At only 8 years old, she was already a small shadow of a leader, wiry and sharp-eyed, her dark chestnut hair jagged from where she had hacked it with sewing scissors. Every glance she gave seemed to measure the world. Alleys, windows, strangers, all were watched for danger. Her twin, Lily, walked close at her side. Same height, same thin frame, but softer. Her hazel eyes dreamy, her chestnut hair tied back with a bit of frayed string, loose strands brushing her cheeks. Lily still carried pieces of the childhood that Maya had already buried, pieces like remembering their mother's lullabies when the nights were cold. Their clothes, like their lives, were patched together from whatever could be found. Maya's navy peacoat hung too large on her thin body, missing a button, while Lily's moss-green jacket sagged with a broken zipper and a missing cuff. Their jeans were worn pale at the knees, their sneakers stiff with frozen damp. For the last 6 months, the only roof over their heads had been an abandoned storage shed on the edge of town, its tin walls rattling whenever the mountain wind pushed against it. That morning, they crept into the narrow lanes of the town market. They were known there, though not by name, just as the quiet girls who sometimes scavenged stale bread or bruised apples from the bins behind shops. Maya had learned how to move quickly, unseen, slipping between stalls like smoke. But this time, she paused near Halpern's bakery, eyes catching a hard loaf discarded by the trash barrel. She snatched it quickly, cracked the crust in half, and pressed the bigger piece into Lily's hands. "Eat it slow," Maya whispered. "You take the big piece," Lily offered gently. But Maya only shook her head, her voice final before it left her lips. Lily smiled faintly, clutching the bread to her chest as if it might warm her. As they moved on, Maya noticed him, a man leaning against a rusted lamppost at the street corner. A thin ribbon of smoke curled from the cigarette between his fingers. His heavy brown jacket was pulled tight, a knit cap low over his brow. He didn't move, but his eyes followed them, calm, too calm, like a wolf waiting. Maya didn't know his name, Roy Mathers, but she knew his type. Men who lingered in the cold for no reason except one. Without speaking, she tightened her grip on Lily's hand and pulled her faster toward the edge of town. The forest loomed ahead, tall and black, beneath its thin veil of snow. That was when the sound came, not the quiet snap of a branch, not the distant call of a crow, but a bark, sharp, urgent, then the crash of something heavy moving fast through the underbrush. Maya froze. Lily shrank back. Before either could decide whether to run, a German shepherd burst from the trees. His coat was matted with dirt, snow, and streaks of drying blood. His right ear bent slightly forward from an old injury. His eyes glowed amber, pained, but unbroken. And though he moved like a trained dog, steady and deliberate, his front paw dragged with a limp that told of exhaustion and injury. This was Axel, 6 years old, once a proud K-9 officer for the Cedar Creek Sheriff's Department. The girls didn't know him, not yet. All they saw was a broken dog that barked once, sharp and commanding, then turned back toward the trail he had come from. He stopped, looked over his shoulder at them, and barked again, insistent. He wants us to follow him, Lily whispered. Maya hesitated. Following a bleeding dog into the woods was not something she counted as wise. But his body spoke louder than her doubt. His tail hung low, ears forward, whole body quivering with purpose. This was no stray. Lily stepped forward first, but Maya caught her sleeve. If we go, we stay behind him. We don't get close until I say. Got it? Her voice was steady, though her heart hammered in her chest. Axel pressed one paw into the snow, lifting it to reveal a smear of red, then limped onward without a sound. The girls followed. The bread in Lily's hand was forgotten. The streets of Cedar Creek slipped away behind them as the woods swallowed their small figures. The deer path narrowed, pine trunks closing in, mist curling low around their legs. With every step, the air grew sharper, colder, tinged with something bitter, the acrid sting of gasoline. Axel pushed ahead until the trees opened onto a rutted service road. And there it was, a patrol SUV skewed against a snowbank, its hood crushed beneath a heavy fallen pine. The windshield sparkled in shards across the snow like spilled diamonds. Maya pulled Lily back instinctively, but Axel went straight to the driver's door, his body rigid, guarding. Inside, slumped against a burst airbag, was a man. His dark winter jacket was smeared with blood, his temple cut, his chest rising shallow but steady. Mid-30s, close-cropped hair, the face of someone built on patience and resolve. This was Ethan Cole, a sergeant of the Cedar Creek Sheriff's Department. For years, he had been the kind of man people trusted to bring calm to crisis. Now, trapped beneath the weight of the storm, he needed saving himself. Maya's instincts took over. She dragged Lily to the passenger side where the glass had shattered outward. Pushing shards aside with her sleeve, she squeezed into the cold cabin. The air smelled sharp of ozone and blood. She leaned close and saw it. He was breathing. "It's okay," she whispered quickly. "We'll get help." Her eyes darted around until she spotted a black radio wedged against the seat. Tugging it free, she shoved it toward Lily. Outside, Lily's hands trembled as she pressed the button. "Dispatch! Dispatch! We found an officer," she stammered. "SUV crushed by a tree near the East Ravine. He's breathing, but he's hurt. Please, please copy." For a moment, only static filled the air. Then a woman's calm voice broke through. "Unit, identify again." Lily's voice cracked, but she forced it steady. "We're not a unit. We're kids. But he's alive. He needs help." Maya brushed snow from the fender, reading the faded numbers. "CCSD 214, she called, and Lily repeated it into the radio. At the sheriff's office, dispatcher Denise Parson leaned closer to her console, her voice smooth, trained. "Honey, tell me your name." "Lily," came the reply. "My sister's Maya, and there's a dog." "Good," Denise said softly. "Stay with me, Lily. Keep the dog close. Can you manage that?" Lily looked at Axel, who stood guard by the officer's door, snow around his paws, spotted red. Her throat tightened. He's the one managing us," she admitted. "In..." The next room, Lieutenant Harper Dawson caught the words over the open channel. His blue eyes narrowed. Years of calls had taught him the cost of being too late. He grabbed his radio, already moving. "Cole, this is Dawson. Hold on. We're coming." He turned to Denise. "Page rescue and medic units. Chains on the tires. I'm heading out." Outside, Dawson pulled on his parka, the weight of the cold biting instantly. He strode to his SUV and started the engine. Back. At the scene, Maya eased the seatbelt from Ethan's chest so it wouldn't press his ribs. "We called," she told him. "They're on their way." Ethan's gaze steadied a little. "Radio," he murmured. Maya lifted it so he could hear Lily talking with dispatch. Lily kept answering questions. "Keep him warm. Don't move his neck. Don't try to free the vehicle." She slipped off her moss-green jacket and folded it beneath his head for insulation. "You're going to be okay," she said, and meant it. Axel paced once around the SUV, nose to the ground, ears flicking. Twice he growled low toward the tree-eyed. Maya followed his gaze but saw only mist and dark trunks. Her grip tightened on the doorframe. Over the radio, Denise's voice came again. "Rescue units en route. ETA 15 minutes. Stay with me." Lily glanced at Maya. 15 minutes, she whispered. Maya nodded, keeping her voice calm. "We can do that." The snow began to fall again, fine as sifted flour, dusting the broken glass and tire. Ruts. The cold pressed hard against their cheeks, but the three of them, 2 girls and a wounded dog, held their ground around a man trapped beneath the fallen tree, listening for the sound of help breaking through the forest. The snowfall thickened, drifting in lazy spirals that softened the edges of the broken patrol SUV. Maya stood near the passenger side, eyes scanning the tree-eyed beyond Axel's tense frame. The dog's amber gaze was locked on something deeper in the forest, his body stiff, fur along his shoulders, lifting in a slow bristle. Then she saw it. A figure standing between the pines, far enough that the details blurred in the mist, but close enough that the shape of him cut sharp against the pale snow. The man wore a black winter coat, zipped to the throat, the collar turned high, and a knit, cap pulled low. He was still, almost too still, one hand resting in his pocket while the other dangled at his side. For a moment, Ma thought he might be a rescuer, but then the figure tilted his head as if marking her face and stepped back into the shadows. Axel's growl rumbled low, vibrating through the quiet, his gaze fixed where the man had vanished. Lily gripped her sister's sleeve. "Who was that?" She whispered. "Not someone we follow," Maya answered, eyes narrowing. She recognized the shape of the man's stance. It was the same posture she'd seen from the smoker at the market earlier that morning. From the road beyond the bend came the faint crunch of tires on packed snow. The sound grew, joined by the deep idle of engines and the flicker of red-blue lights bleeding into the mist. Lieutenant Harper Dawson's Tahoe appeared first, chains clinking around its tires, followed by a rescue truck fitted with a hydraulic, saw, and a medic unit painted in the fading county colors. Harper climbed out before the vehicle fully stopped, his tall frame cutting a clear silhouette against the swirling snow. His blue eyes swept the scene once. SUV, tree, injured officer, 2 children, and a German shepherd standing guard, and then locked on Ethan. He approached with steady strides, his parka open just enough to reveal the charcoal uniform beneath. "It's Sergeant Cole," he called, voice firm, but even. "We've got you." Behind him, Caleb Boone, a rescue specialist in his late 20s with a broad, easy build and a perpetual smudge of grease on his cheek, unloaded the saw from the truck. Caleb had a reputation for laughing off danger until the blade was in his hands. Then his focus could cut steel. The medic, Anna Fields, early 30s, compact and freckle-free with light brown hair tucked under a knit beanie, moved to Ethan's side, her kit snapping, open in practice sequence. "Pulse steady, head trauma, probable concussion," she reported without looking up. Her voice was calm, the kind forged by nights in ER trauma bays. Harper gave a short nod, then turned to Maya and Lily. "You two found him?" Maya shifted her weight. "We just heard the dog." Harper's gaze flicked to Axel, who was still watching the tree-eyed. "Good dog," he said under his breath. While Caleb and another rescuer cut through the fallen tree's trunk, Harper crouched by Ethan's window. "Hang on, partner," he said, voice low. Ethan's eyes flickered open, confusion clouding the green-gray. "Harper." "Yeah, it's me." Harper kept talking, grounding him while the saw, wind, and wood chips sprayed into the snow. In the back of the medic truck, Anna wrapped a thermal blanket over Ethan and began cleaning the wound at his temple. Axel limped over, nose touching Ethan's gloved hand for a heartbeat before the medics eased the officer inside. The rescue team turned toward the girls. "We'll need to take your names and contact your guardian," Harper began, but Maya's shoulders tightened. She shot Lily a quick glance. The last time they'd been collected by strangers, it had led to weeks in a crowded foster home that smelled of mildew and old rules. Without a word, she stepped back, tugging Lily with her toward the edge of the woods. Harper's radio crackled, drawing his attention. By the time he looked back, the twins were already slipping into the mist, their small shapes swallowed by the trees. From the deeper shadows, Roy Mathers adjusted the brim of his cap and watched them leave. His breath curled in white streams, the faint scent of cigarette smoke clinging to his coat. He had been standing here long enough to memorize the set of their shoulders, the way the older girl shielded the younger with every step. When the time came, he knew he could find them. Miles away in the Cedar Creek Medical Center, Ethan stirred awake hours later. The world was dim and antiseptic. The steady beep of a monitor to his right. A dull ache throbbed behind his eyes. He tried to summon the memory of the accident, but it came only in fragments, trees crowding close, a rush of barking, the outline of two small figures in the cold, and strangest of all, a silhouette holding a lighter, its flame guttering in the wind before vanishing into the dark. Anna stepped into the room, clipboard in hand. "You're lucky," she said, checking his vitals. "Another few minutes out there in the cold, and it could have been worse." Ethan's gaze drifted to the empty space at the foot of his bed. "The dog stable. Your partner's making sure he gets proper care." Ethan closed his eyes again, but the image of that lighter stayed, flickering behind his eyelids. The wind that swept across Cedar Creek in late winter carried the scent of pine sap and melting snow, the kind of air that hinted spring was trying to muscle its way in but hadn't quite succeeded. At Cedar Creek Medical Center, Ethan Cole sat upright in a hospital bed, one hand idly tracing the rough edge of the bandage at his temple. The room's muted light made the edges of his memories sharper, fragments threading together in uneven lines. Roy Mathers' face half hidden beneath a black coat collar, the acrid smell of gasoline, and a thick folder with a red evidence tag that he could almost feel in his hands. It had been weeks before the accident during an off-duty hike when he'd stumbled across an unmarked truck deep in the state forest, its bed loaded with freshly cut cedar logs. He remembered snapping photos, finding the folder stashed under a tarp, and realizing it wasn't just stolen timber. It was a ledger complete with names, payment routes, and coordinates that lined up with known drop points for contraband shipments. And somewhere in those details, Roy Mathers' name had surfaced, tied to a network that had been quietly draining the region's resources for years. Ethan rubbed at his forehead, frustration biting into him. The harder he tried to assemble the timeline, the more it slipped, like snow sliding off a roof. But he knew two things for certain. Roy was dangerous, and the girls who had pulled him back from unconsciousness had looked at him with the kind of wary instinct that meant they'd been around trouble before. Across town at the Cedar Creek Veterinary and Canine Rehabilitation Clinic, Axel lay on a padded mat, his right fore wrapped in clean gauze. The clinic smelled faintly of antiseptic and hay from the boarding barn out back. Dr. Simone Hart, mid-40s, tall and spare with sharp cheekbones and a manner that was brisk but not unkind, knelt beside him. She had a way of speaking to animals that was more action than word, a skill honed from years of working with rescue cases in rural Montana. As she checked the stitches, Axel turned his head toward the open window, nostrils flaring. Even after days in the sterile comfort of the clinic, the scent he was searching for clung to his memory. 2 girls, one with hands that smelled faintly of flour and old wool, the other of dry leaves and soap. Later, when a veta clipped on his rehabilitation harness for a short walk, Axel ignored the offered route along the back fence. He angled instead, toward the street, nose sweeping low, tail stiff, pulling with more determination than his healing leg should allow. He didn't care about the ache. Somewhere in the cold bite of the wind was a thread of scent, faint but insistent, and he filed it away like a trail he would follow the moment he could. Meanwhile, in the sheriff's office, Harper Dawson leaned over a spread of case files, the desk lamp casting long shadows across his uniform. His fingertips tapped the corner of a printout, showing grainy drone images of logging trucks moving through restricted forest roads. The case had stalled months ago. Every informant had either disappeared or gone silent. Now 2 unnamed girls had turned up at the scene of a deliberate accident, and one of them had managed to relay enough detail over a radio to keep Ethan alive until help arrived. Harper didn't believe in coincidences. He pulled a yellow legal pad closer and wrote 3 names: Roy Mathers, Ethan Cole, unknown witnesses. Beneath unknown witnesses, he underlined twice and wrote, "Find them before Roy does." He didn't yet know that Roy had already started looking. On the far side of town, in a sagging brick building whose original purpose had long been forgotten, Maya and Lily Parker were trying to keep warm. The place had once been a small residential care home, but now only 3 of its rooms were serviceable, maintained by Ellen Brooks, a retired school teacher in her late 60s. Ellen had silver hair cropped short, a slight stoop to her posture, and a way of speaking that always made it sound like she was about to read from a storybook. She'd taken on work with a local charity that placed vulnerable kids in temporary housing when official shelters were full. Her approach was simple: feed them, give them clean blankets, and ask no questions until they were ready to talk. Maya trusted her. Enough to accept the hot tea she offered, but not enough to share their names. Lily, ever the softer one, had started answering Ellen's questions in half-truths, weaving little details about the dog we met and a man in a black coat into her chatter. That evening, as they sat near the fireplace, another volunteer dropped by, Hank Lowry, early 7s, with a frame still broad from his days as a sawmill foreman. His face was weathered by decades outdoors, his voice slow and growly. He carried a cardboard box of donated canned goods in one hand, and a stack of folded blankets in the other. While setting the blankets down, he caught part of Lily's story and gave a thoughtful hum. "You ever hear about the old sawmill east of the timberline?" he asked, looking between the sisters. Ma shook her head. Hank went on. "Place has been empty since I was your age, but folks say it wasn't always just cutting lumber. Bunch of rough types used it back in the day. Some say they still do when no one's watching." He leaned closer, lowering his voice like he was sharing a campfire secret. "If you ever see a man headed that way with a truck bed covered in tarps, you turn yourself around. Nothing good comes out of there." Maya stored the information without comment, but she caught the way Lily's eyes darted toward her, both of them thinking of the black-coated man in the woods. Back at the medical center, Ethan's night was restless. Between the hum of machines and the weight of his thoughts, sleep came in shallow fits. In one dream, he was back on the forest road, the scent of cut cedar sharp in the air. Roy's face turned toward him with that cold half-smile. In another, he saw 2 small figures disappearing into mist while a German shepherd barked after them. When he woke just before dawn, the dreams clung to him like frost, refusing to melt away. At the vet clinic, Axel stood by the door to his run, eyes fixed on the hallway. The scent thread was there again, faint but stronger now, as if the wind itself was conspiring to remind him of the trail he'd yet to follow. The skies over Cedar Creek had turned the color of wet slate, and the steady drizzle gave the streets a slick sheen. It was late afternoon, the kind of day where the mountains seemed to lean closer, trapping the gray clouds over the valley. The empty parking lot behind the old residential care building, rain drummed softly against the dented roof of a battered white pickup truck. Inside, Roy Mathers sat behind the wheel, watching the rear entrance of the building with the still patience of a man who had spent years waiting for the right moment to strike. He was dressed in the navy jacket and baseball cap of a local delivery service, both pieces too new and too clean for anyone who knew his real habits. The stubble along his jaw was trimmed, and the smirk he wore as he lit another cigarette was that of someone confident in his hunt. Roy was a man who stood just shy of 6 feet, broad-shouldered, his frame built from years of hard labor and harder fights. His dark hair was threaded with premature gray, and his eyes, a muddy brown, carried a flatness that suggested he'd long ago stopped caring about right or wrong. Once a mill foreman, he had been fired after a violent dispute over stolen timber shipments, a blow to his pride that hardened him into the dangerous man Ethan had encountered months earlier. Now, with Ethan still missing pieces of his memory, Roy believed the easiest way to make sure nothing came back to haunt him was to remove the girls who had meddled in his escape. Inside the care home, Ellen Brooks was in the kitchen, drying mugs with the same meticulousness she used for her lesson plans back when she taught elementary school. Her short silver hair was damp from having stepped outside to pull in laundry just before the rain started. She moved slowly, but with purpose, humming under her breath. The girls, Maya and Lily, were in the lounge area, each clutching a paperback book. Ellen had scavenged from the library donation bin. The knock at the side door was brisk, 2 taps followed by a pause. Ellen opened it to find a delivery man with a clipboard. Roy's voice was warm, the kind that made you lower your guard. Package from Ms. Brooks. Needs a signature. Ellen frowned slightly. She wasn't expecting anything, but before she could question it, Roy glanced past her shoulder. "Oh, are those the 2 little helpers from the church event?" He smiled at the girls. Lily looked up, her natural curiosity overcoming caution. Maya, sharper in her instincts, felt a twinge in her stomach. Ellen, not sensing danger, stepped aside. Roy took the opportunity to crouch slightly, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Got something here for you, girls? Came from the shelter downtown. Figured you'd want to see it right away." The lure was enough. Lily stood, and despite Maya's quick shake of the head, she followed. The moment they stepped past the doorframe, Roy's hands moved fast. One arm hooked around Lily's waist, the other grabbing Ma's wrist in a vice-like grip. Ellen shouted, dropping the mug she held. But by the time she reached the door, Roy had already shoved the girls toward the truck. The rain masked much of the commotion, and the pickup's engine roared to life, spitting gravel as it sped away. A few blocks away, at the Cedar Creek Veterinary Clinic, Axel had been let out for his afternoon exercise. His coat was still damp from a bath. The sable fur along his neck fluffed unevenly. As the rain hit his nose, another scent cut through the damp air. Oil and cigarette smoke layered with the faint trace of the girls he'd been searching for since the rescue. His ears snapped forward, muscles tensing. Dr. Simone Hart, holding the leash, felt a sudden jolt as Axel lunged toward the street. "Axel, wait!" she called, but the dog's determination was absolute in a burst of strength that surprised even her. The clip of the leash snapped free from his harness. Axel tore down the sidewalk, paws splashing through shallow puddles, the smell growing, fresher with each stride. He reached the main road just in time to see a white pickup disappearing into the curtain of rain. The truck was too far ahead for him to catch. His injured leg protested every leap, but his resolve was unshaken. After a short sprint, he turned, sharply heading toward the one person who would understand. The hospital was 3 streets away, and Axel knew the route by heart. At Cedar Creek Medical Center, Ethan Cole was sitting on the edge of his bed, restless. His head injury still acted in the damp weather, but the enforced stillness was harder to bear. The sudden sound of claws skittering on tile in the hallway made him look up. Then came the sharp, insistent bark, a sound he knew well. Axel burst through the half-open door, drenched and panting, eyes locked on Ethan. The dog moved straight to him, gripping the fabric of his hospital gown sleeve with his teeth and pulling hard. Ethan's hand went to Axel's head automatically, feeling the tremor in the animal's muscles. "What is it, boy?" Axel barked again, urgent, glancing toward the hallway, then back at Ethan, repeating the tug. That was enough for Ethan's instincts to kick in. Something was wrong, seriously wrong. He grabbed his jacket from the chair, ignoring the nurse's protest as he followed Axel out the door. Rain hit his face the moment they stepped outside, but Axel was already moving, his head low, tracking the scent. Whatever had happened, Ethan knew two things. Axel had found a lead and time was running out. The rain had turned into a fine cold mist that clung to everything like an unshakable memory. Cedar Creek's forest road was slick with mud, the air sharp with the smell of pine and damp earth. Ethan Cole sat behind the wheel of his dark green police truck, his eyes fixed on the narrow track ahead. The throb in his temple hadn't gone away since the accident, but it no longer clouded his focus. If anything, it sharpened it. He knew they were running out of time. Beside him, Harper Dawson adjusted the strap of her tactical vest, her blue eyes darting between the GPS on her lap and the blurred outlines of trees rushing past. Harper was in her early 40s, tall and lean, her posture straight even after hours in the field. She had earned a reputation for being unshakable under pressure, but Ethan noticed the way her jaw tightened. She was worried. In the back seat, Axel stood with his paws braced against the window, his sable coat bristling, his breath fogging the glass. The 6-year-old German Shepherd's left hind leg was still stiff from an old injury, but there was nothing hesitant in the way he stared into the forest. Axel had picked up the scent outside the veterinary clinic, tugging Ethan urgently toward a set of tire tracks half hidden in the mud. Harper had crouched to inspect them, deep grooves from a pickup truck heading west, straight toward the old sawmill. "That's Roy's route," she'd said without hesitation. The truck could only go so far. The road narrowed to a path barely wide enough for a person, flanked by dense undergrowth and skeletal pines. Ethan killed the engine. The silence that followed was broken only by the patter of rain on leaves and Axel's low whine. Ethan reached for his flashlight. Harper unholstered her sidearm, and Axel leapt down, immediately lowering his head to sniff the trail. They moved quickly but cautiously. Axel's pace was steady, his tail a rigid flag. Twice he halted abruptly, ears twitching before veering sharply. The first time, Ethan didn't see anything until Harper's hand shot out to stop him. "Trip wire," she whispered. A nearly invisible cord stretched ankle high between two trunks, leading to a crude snare lined with rusted nails. Axel had bypassed it instinctively. The deeper they went, the more the forest seemed to close in. The mist thickened, carrying the faint tang of oil and old wood smoke. Then the trees parted into a clearing, and the sawmill emerged from the gloom, like a ghost from another time. Its walls sagged, the roof patched with rusted tin, and broken windows stared out like blind eyes. The massive conveyor belt frame loomed behind it, and stacks of rotting planks leaned precariously against one wall. Inside, the light from a single dangling bulb revealed Roy Mather's pacing. He was in his late 30s, broad-shouldered, wearing a black jacket that had seen better days, his short hair plastered to his head with sweat. A cigarette dangled from his lips, smoke curling lazily upward. Maya and Lily sat bound to wooden chairs, their wrists tied behind them, ropes digging into their thin arms. Lily's eyes were wide with fear. Ma's jaw was set tight, though her small frame trembled. Roy held a phone to his ear, his voice low, but carrying in the empty space. "Yeah, I took care of him before." Dropping that pine across his cruiser wasn't luck. And the files burning them tonight. No one will. He stopped to take a drag, oblivious to the small phone tucked into Lily's jacket pocket. Maya had slipped it there earlier, turning on a music app to distract her sister. She hadn't realized. It was also recording. Harper crouched behind a stack of lumber outside, signaling to Ethan with 2 fingers. "Split and flank." Ethan nodded, his heart pounding. Axel stayed pressed to his side, muscles tense, amber eyes locked on the shadow moving inside. Harper slid. Toward the back entrance, her steps silent on the wet earth. Ethan positioned himself near the side door, counting under his breath. At 3, he kicked it open. The door slammed against the wall, startling Roy. His eyes flicked from Ethan to the girls and back, calculating. He reached for a crowbar on the workbench, but before he could lift it, Axel was airborne. The dog hit him square in the chest, knocking him back into a pile of sawdust. Roy shouted, swinging wildly, but Axel clamped his jaws onto the man's jacket sleeve, yanking him sideways. Harper burst in through the rear, weapon aimed. "Drop it, Roy, now!" Roy twisted, trying to shake Axel off, but Harper closed in fast. She swept his legs from under him, forcing him to the ground with a sharp thud. Ethan darted past, his hands moving quickly to untie Maya and Lily. Maya immediately wrapped her arms around Lily, whispering something too soft to hear. Harper retrieved the phone from Lily's pocket, her expression hardening as she replayed the audio. Roy's voice came through clear, the confession about the fallen pine, the intent to destroy evidence. "That's all we need," Harper said, slipping it into an evidence bag. While Harper cuffed Roy, Ethan spotted several wooden crates stacked in the corner, each stenciled with the faded logo of a logging company connected to previous illegal timber seizures. The sight confirmed what he'd been starting to remember. Roy wasn't just a thug, he was part of a larger network. Outside, the rain fell steadily, drumming on the tin roof. They led Roy out, his hands bound, Axel trotting alongside the girls. The dog's gait was stiff but proud, head high despite his injury. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on his partner's neck. "Good work, boy," he murmured. As they crossed the clearing, Harper glanced back at the mill. "This ends tonight," she said. Ethan nodded, though he knew deep down that what they'd uncovered here might only be the beginning. Still, for now, Maya and Lily were safe, and Roy Mathers was going to jail with more than enough evidence to keep him there. 3 months after the raid at the sawmill, the snow in Cedar Creek had given way to early spring's thaw. The courthouse, an old brick building with white columns and tall windows, stood as the town's silent witness to the trial that had gripped the community. The air inside was heavy with anticipation. Every seat was filled, the scent of polished wood mingling with the faint aroma of coffee from the vending machine in the hallway. Ethan Cole sat at the witness stand, his uniform freshly pressed, his bearing steady. The bruises and scars from that winter day had long healed, but the memories remained sharp. Across the room, Roy Mathers sat at the defendant's table in an ill-fitting gray suit. His broad shoulders seemed smaller now, his once confident smirk, replaced by a grim, flat stare. Beside him, his 2 accomplices, Trent Duval and Carl Haskins, shifted uncomfortably, both in their late 30s, unshaven and sullen. Judge Margaret Ellsworth presided from the bench, a tall woman in her late 50s, with streaks of silver in her chestnut hair. She had a reputation for being firm but fair, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had seen too many lives wasted by greed and violence. Her gaze was piercing as she listened to the last of the testimonies. The prosecution laid out the case in meticulous detail, the audio recording from Lily's phone clear enough to capture Roy's own words about the pine tree accident and plans to destroy files, the seized crates of illegal timber linking him to a smuggling network, Ethan's testimony about the ambush in the forest, Harper Dawson's account of the rescue. Maya and Lily testified via closed-circuit video from a private room, their small voices steady, but their eyes betraying the fear of reliving that day. Harper, dressed in her Navy suit, sat beside Ethan, offering him a subtle nod when the prosecutor thanked them both for their persistence. The defense tried to argue entrapment, claimed the recording was a coincidence, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When the verdict was read, the room seemed to hold its breath. We, the jury, find the defendant, Roy Matz, guilty on all counts: attempted murder, kidnapping of minors, destruction of public property, and organized smuggling. The same verdict followed for Trent and Carl under charges of conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Judge Ellsworth's sentencing was unflinching. "Roy Mathers, you are hereby sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole." Her voice was steady, without triumph or malice, only certainty. "Trent Duvall and Carl Haskins, each of you is sentenced to 25 years in state prison." Roy's lips curled into a faint, bitter smile, but his eyes were dark with unspoken rage. In the gallery, a murmur rose. Relief, vindication, the quiet satisfaction of justice served. A few townspeople even stood to applaud, though Judge Ellsworth quickly called for order. After court adjourned, the front steps of the courthouse became a scene of quiet celebration. Harper clasped Ethan's shoulder. "We did it," she said, her voice lighter than he'd heard in months. Ethan exhaled deeply, glancing over to see Maya and Lily approaching under the care of a social worker, their small hands intertwined. Ethan had recovered his memory in full weeks earlier. Every detail of the ambush, every face, every decision was clear now. The department had honored him with a commendation for valor, not only for surviving, but for refusing to stop until the case was closed. Harper had been his advocate in another way. She'd filed the petition for Ethan to become the girl's legal guardian, with herself named as co-guardian. The process had taken weeks of interviews, background checks, and paperwork. But today, in a side session before the trial, the judge had signed the order. Maya and Lily Parker now had a home. That home wasn't just with Ethan, it was with Axel, too. The German Shepherd had made a full recovery from his injuries, his sable coat gleaming in the afternoon light as he trotted toward them now. A small, silver tag dangled from his new collar, engraved simply with the word family. When Lily spotted him, she ran forward, dropping to her knees to hug his neck. Axel leaned into her, tail wagging. The four of them, Ethan, Harper, Maya, and Lily, walked together down Main Street as flurries drifted gently from the sky. The air was crisp, but carried the promise of warmer days ahead. The bells from the town hall began to chime the hour, their deep notes echoing off the brick storefronts. Ethan glanced at the girls, then at Harper, feeling a rare sense of completeness. Behind them, the courthouse doors closed, sealing the past inside. Ahead lay something new, not without challenges, but built on trust, resilience, and the kind of loyalty that survives the worst winters. And as they turned the corner toward home, Axel bounded ahead, stopping to look back as if to make sure his family was still following. They were always. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with thunder or blinding light. They come quietly in the form of a loyal dog, a stranger's courage, or the second chance we didn't believe we'd ever have. In this story, justice was served and a family was born from the ashes of fear. Perhaps it is God's way of reminding us that He is present not only in grand victories, but in the small, steadfast acts of love and faith that carry us through each day. If this story touched your heart, share it so others may find hope in it. 2. Leave a comment with your thoughts and subscribe to join our community of those who believe in compassion, courage, and the quiet miracles of everyday life. May God bless you and guide you today and